Hey there, fans of superhero sagas and 90s pop culture enthusiasts, and, well, everyone else cool enough to be here. Today we're diving into a throwback from the mid-90s, a time when Batman grappled with Bane and Spider-Man did his thing in the Clone Saga. But the decade also saw some awesome crossovers, including the 1995 comic book Spider-Man and Batman: Disordered Minds. In this retro reflection, we're not just talking about any old team-up. Oh no, we're exploring what happens when two of the most iconic and relatable superheroes, Spider-Man and Batman, clash with the most unhinged villains from their respective universes. Imagine the chaos when the crafty minds of Marvel's and DC's notorious baddies join forces. Will our heroes stand a chance? So, buckle up as we delve into this thrilling adventure and see how Spider-Man and Batman fare against the combined madness of their respective arch-enemies. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Nightmares. It took just one bullet to turn Peter Parker's life upside down. A single bullet that took his uncle's life. No matter what Peter did after that fateful night, the horrors never left his side. All he wanted to do was to stop the fear and the pain, but more importantly, the death of his uncle. Peter was in a nightmare, and he was failing yet again, much like he did in his waking life. The killer was not some supervillain, Peter thought. He was just a common burglar, an ordinary man. So how was it that an ordinary man could do what he did? How could an ordinary man destroy Peter's entire world? Poor Peter Parker did not realize back then that this guy was the most psychotic villain that Gotham had ever witnessed. That this common burglar was Joker, the clown prince of crime. In these nightmares, the Joker laughed at Spider-Man. He always laughed, making a mockery of the superhero's fate. The nightmare finally ended, and Peter woke up beside Mary Jane, restless and tensed. It was Mary Jane's love, humor, and wisdom that kept Peter going and kept him from dissolving into chaos. This was Manhattan. The next panel took us to a much darker place, a city plagued with darker criminals and worse forms of crime than Manhattan. This was Gotham, Batman's Gotham. If you are wondering how this was made possible, the story was set on Earth 7642, where not only did DC and Marvel universes collide, but that Earth also had characters from other universes like Transformers, Wildcats, Witchblade, and She. Nevertheless, Bruce Wayne was also experiencing a nightmare, a story similar to Spider-Man's, but with different characters. Bruce Wayne, in his dreams, would often hear the cocked gun, his father's final helpless cry, and the thud of his mother's body on the pavement. He felt the same guilt as Spider-Man, that he was too late to save his loved ones. And who was this guy who committed the murders? It was not a common punk, no. This was death itself. This was Carnage. The symbiote let Bruce go that night, leaving him there, terrified and drenched in the blood of his parents. Bruce had had the dream every night since he was a child, but he still could not get used to it. Bruce reflected on his role as a superhero, someone who served the city without demanding anything in return. But he made a very interesting statement here during his introspection. I am what fate made me. From dawn to dusk, a lie named Bruce Wayne, and from dusk to dawn, the truth called Batman. So, in a way, he confirmed that his real identity was that of Batman, and Bruce Wayne was the mask he wore. This theory prevailed in The Dark Knight Rises as well, where he went to the gala without a mask, and when asked who he was pretending to be, he simply described Bruce Wayne to Selina. Psycho in a Cage, also known as Carnage. The real story began in the Ravencourt Institute for the Criminally Insane in Westchester County. Spider-Man had been called by a friend of his, Dr. Ashley Kafka, one of the most renowned and respected psychotherapists in the country. She told Spider-Man that it was a matter of urgent concern, and although he had a dozen reasons to make better use of the Saturday evening, he chose to oblige Kafka's request and went to see Cletus Cassidy, the lunatic in cage, or as we know him, Carnage. He was on with his creepy shenanigans, telling Kafka how he enjoyed the attention since he was apparently a neglected child. But was he really the tortured, abused, and neglected child? Or was he simply the inevitable aberration? The soul that was born so black, so twisted, so filled with unreasoning hatred that there's practically no explanation. But I digress. Why was Spider-Man there at Ravencroft? Well, Kafka wanted to treat Cassidy's twisted brain because that's what gave rise to the symbiote residing within him. If Cassidy's rage could be controlled, Carnage could be controlled. However, Mr. Cassidy broke out of his cage. Blood could have flown like wine from a broken barrel had it not been for Spider-Man. Spidey raised punches on the symbiote's smirking face because if he so much had an instant to breathe, everyone in the room, maybe in the whole building, was as good as dead. And Spider-Man knew it. He knew what kind of a walking impossibility Carnage was. However, there was every chance that the first one to die that day could be Spider-Man himself. But Colonel John Jonah Jameson III arrived just in the nick of time with his team and stunned Carnage using what they called the microwave guns, reverting him back to his human form. As you may have guessed, Jameson was the son of the notorious motor-mouth reporter J. Jonah Jameson, whom we know from Spider-Man movies and comics. Anyway, the high-intensity waves from the guns could only subdue Carnage for a short while. The only way to indeed destroy Cassidy was through therapy. Only Cassidy's mind could possibly neutralize the symbiote, or at least that's what Dr. Kafka believed in. She was interrupted by Cassandra Breyer, who was a behavioral psychologist that the Congressional Committee had appointed to take care of people like Cletus Cassidy. Breyer had an alternative approach to dealing with Cassidy. She had invented a biotechnic cure, a small computer chip that could be inserted into the cerebral cortex of a subject, which would alter their brainwaves, essentially turning them into mindless drones. But Kafka was not up for it. She believed that every heart, no matter how twisted, possessed some spark of decency and inherent humanity that could be nurtured. In fact, even Spider-Man was against this high-tech lobotomy. However, Breyer was not proposing anything. She was doing it right then and there, and she had the full sanction from the United States government. Naturally, Breyer overrode Kafka and seemingly put an end to Cassidy's terror as Carnage, Clown Prince of Crime. Meanwhile, in Gotham, Joker had come up with a plan that was so smart that it apparently amazed him. Honestly, I don't see what's so special about it because he was just going to, release some virus-injected bats into the city, which could have turned millions all batty. Well, personally, I expect better from this guy. Better than a wicked sense of poetic justice, or injustice, depending on how you look at it. Nevertheless, Batman stopped the Joker, and he was taken to Arkham. Batman had been fighting the Joker for all these years, and all these years, the Joker had been haunting Batman like a ghost. He would escape from Arkham every time he was taken there, only to laugh at everything that was good and decent. But Batman had come to accept his fate. Anyway, this time was going to be different. You see, Breyer had come to Arkham Asylum to speak to Dr. Arkham himself. She wanted to use her biotechnic chip on the Joker, claiming it was the only way to penetrate the impenetrable mind of the Joker. But Dr. Arkham was skeptical about it. So to prove that her demented procedure actually worked, she brought in Cassidy, now a completely changed and docile man with no violent impulses or outbursts. Breyer claimed that the procedure had turned him calm in addition to leaving the symbiote dormant and trapped inside Cassidy's body. Of course, Kafka protested again, and Breyer used her congressional authority card again. Soon, the Joker was also given Breyer's lobotomy. Disordered minds. So what was next? Well, Miss Breyer wanted to show off to the world her achievement, so she brought Cassidy and the Joker out into the open, dressed in suits, for a press conference of sorts. 1 week ago, these were madmen. Now they are just two harmless puppies. Of course, the question of human rights came up, but who cares really? They don't care about human rights in the real world, so we cannot really expect much from comics. Anyway, let's cut to the next scene. Briar was cruising through Gotham with Joker and Carnage, and there was a nervous driver who wasn't too keen on having these infamous baddies in the back seat. Anyone would freak out, and the driver's fears were justified. Briar's all confident, claiming the bad old days of Joker and Carnage are history. But of course, there had to be a plot twist. The chip had brought no changes to Carnage or Cassidy's demented mind. He had just been waiting for the right moment to make an escape and chose this moment to execute his grand plan, which caused the car to crash. Things escalate quickly. Carnage took Briar and Joker hostage, creating a standoff with the government guys. But wait, one of the guards was Batman in disguise. That's very Batmanish of the Caped Crusader. Carnage, ever the talker, was busy showing off how he was not your run-of-the-mill Batman villain. But Batman didn't really have to deal with him alone. Let's not forget this is a crossover. So who swung in? Our very own Super Spider. He saved Briar with his webs. It was action time, with Spider-Man and Batman teaming up against Carnage. But it was not their day. Carnage, ever the slippery one, made a break for it with Joker, using his symbiote tentacles to keep the heroes busy tending to the wounded. However, Batman had no time for team-ups. He told Spider-Man to hit the road and leave Gotham to him. But as should be expected of him, Spider-Man was all about lending a hand. But Batman was not buying what he was selling and took off. The scene then shifted to a shady warehouse where Carnage was playing tech surgeon, ripping out the chip that had been keeping the Joker on a leash. Joker was then back to his chaotic self, and Carnage pitched a partnership. Although not much of a team player, Joker was game for the said partnership. Back at the Batcave, Batman was deep into research mode, trying to crack the Carnage code, but Cassidy's mind was a maze with no exit. Frustrated, Batman decided it was time for a field trip, casually snubbing Alfred's sandwich-making skills on his way out. Meanwhile, Spider-Man was doing his thing in Gotham, playing hero and saving a woman from a crazed mugger. Just as he was catching his breath, who shows up? Batman, in his Batmobile, signaled Spidey to hop in for a ride. Batman vs. Carnage. In an abandoned theater turned into the Joker's lair, he laid out his latest plan to Carnage. This time around, he wanted to spread the Joker virus via tons of Joker in the boxes instead of the bats, a twisted Christmas gift for the kids. But that's the Joker for you. You see, this is what I was talking about earlier. This is what one expects from his vile brain. But what about Carnage? Well, he was not impressed. He was more into straightforward, brutal chaos and outright carnage. The Joker insisted that they should not give up on the flair and drama that came with theatricality and deception. He had style, and he was not about to change it for Carnage's blunt methods. Carnage was not in the mood to budge, and Joker had had enough. He drew the line and even compared Carnage to David Hasselhoff, not a compliment in his book. He bailed through a secret trapdoor, leaving Carnage behind. Safe from a distance, the Joker hit the button on his remote, blowing the theater sky high, with Carnage still inside. Classic Joker move, making an exit with a bang, with Carnage still inside. This guy did unspeakable things to his so-called love of life, Harley Quinn, so it's not surprising that he kicked Carnage in the ass. Riding in the Batmobile, Batman ate some humble pie and admitted to Spider-Man that his knowledge of Carnage might actually be handy. They traced Carnage using a leftover chip piece and wound up at the wrecked theater. There, they found Carnage, but it was a setup. Carnage sprung on Batman, ready to finish him off. Batman was all defiant, ready to face the end. So basically, in a fight between Batman and Carnage, the ugly alien would win. Right as Carnage was about to deal the final blow, the Joker jumped in. He had dibs on Batman, and nobody else would get to take him out. Joker also had his deadly Joker in the box ready to go. Spider-Man was appalled by Joker's callousness, while Carnage was just plain scared of being offed. finally giving Batman the upper hand in their fight. Spider-Man, quick on the draw, webbed away the Joker in the box, thwarting Joker's plan. Meanwhile, Batman got Carnage to buckle under pressure and turn back into Cassidy. Spider-Man caught up with the Joker, who was weirdly excited at the thought of Spider-Man going darkside and killing him. Spider-Man wasn't biting, though. He knocked Joker out cold instead. With Carnage and Joker down for the count, Batman and Spider-Man shared a wordless, respectful handshake. Spider-Man headed back to New York, leaving Batman to his brooding vigil over Gotham. Batman and Spider-Man's ideologies in handing criminals. Spider-Man and Batman, two of the most iconic superheroes, are the epitome of relatable, deeply human characters. The core of their appeal lies in their starkly different yet surprisingly similar backstories and ideologies. Starting with Spider-Man, a brainy high school kid turned superhero after a radioactive spider bite. He's gifted with incredible powers, but at a steep price: the loss of his Uncle Ben. This tragedy teaches him that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Peter's guilt over his uncle's death, a consequence of his initial selfishness, drives him. He could have saved his uncle, but didn't. This guilt fuels Spider-Man's relentless drive to help others, often at the expense of Peter Parker's happiness. He's the wisecracking hero, masking the pessimism and burden Peter carries daily. On the flip side, Batman's origin is rooted in a powerless, traumatic childhood experience. Bruce Wayne, a rich kid, witnesses his parents' murder and is powerless to stop it. Unlike Peter, Bruce isn't burdened by guilt over a direct action, but by a deep-seated determination to prevent others from suffering his fate. This resolve turns him into Batman, a dark, brooding figure, contrasting sharply with the carefree billionaire Bruce Wayne. Batman's mission is driven by a commitment to protect and a deep empathy for those he saves. Both heroes are defined by how they balance their dual identities and how these personas affect their actions. Their popularity isn't just about cool costumes or powers. It's about their human struggles with real-world issues. They deal with themes like drug abuse, bullying, corruption, and loss, issues that resonate deeply with readers. Marvelous verdict. Mark Bagley, known for his work on Marvel's Amazing Spider-Man, brought his signature style to this crossover comic, which gives a fresh yet familiar look to Marvel characters. But DC characters? Not so much. His Spider-Man is classic Bagley, but his Batman, Joker, and the Gotham City backdrop are, let's say, interesting. However, Bagley's Joker evolves visually with the story, shifting from sinister to almost subdued, while his Batman is bulkier compared to Spidey, with a sometimes overly dramatic cape. Artistically, Bagley takes some bold swings. The action and dialogue scenes have their moments of brilliance, though sometimes the flair overshoots. His action scenes, with their intensity and vibrancy, really stand out. However, Bagley's style might not be everyone's cup of tea. J.M. DeMatteis's script, while ambitious, hits some snags with character equality and plot constraints. The story kicks off with Spider-Man and Batman experiencing nightmares, which allows their iconic villains to swap places. But the characters of Ashley Kafka and Cassandra Breyer come off as too similar, almost blending into one. Mary Jane and Alfred make brief appearances, but don't add much to the story. The story doesn't pit Batman against Spider-Man, dodging the typical superhero crossover showdown. Instead, we see them operating in their own styles before joining forces against the villains. The dynamic between Carnage and Joker is underexplored, given their notorious backgrounds. They're shown as contrasting in their methods, but there's a missed opportunity to delve deeper into their menacing natures. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.